Hey everyone, here is part 2 to the trig ratios. Today we're going to find angles instead of sides, and what you guys are going to see is that it's very similar to finding sides. We still mark our angles. We're still going to mark the two sides, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. We're still going to decide what trig ratio to use, and we're still going to write an equation. The good news is here, that's different from yesterday, is once we write our equation, then it's a straight calculator. Go right to Desmos, and Desmos will give you the answer. So let's just review very quickly. What is the mnemonic we use for our trig ratios? Yeah, SOHCAHTOA. So let's write that. So, ka, toa. And real quick, let's just review. So, S is for sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Ka, C is for cosine, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. And toa, T is for tangent, which is opposite over adjacent. So we're just going to jump in, see how this goes. Find the missing angles. Okay, so hopefully everybody sees this looks different than the other day. The other day we actually had a number here. Here it's X, or it can be any variable that they want to use. But step one, we're still going to mark our angle. We're going to use that as our reference angle to label our other sides. So again, we're going to label opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. We're only going to label the two sides that have information on them, so that we don't confuse ourselves. So I'm looking at my picture, and I see that the 12 would be my hypotenuse, because it's directly across from my right angle. And 5 is opposite my reference angle. Okay. Not going to label this side right here because there's no information on it, so we're not going to use it. So we're not going to label it. If we label it, we might confuse ourselves. So there's nothing on that side. We're not going to use it. Leave it alone. So now we have hypotenuse and opposite. So now we have to decide which trig function has those two pieces in it. That would be sine. So we're going to say sine of our angle, just like we did the other day. Sine of, this time we don't have a number. Okay, it's X, or again, whatever variable they want to use, equals, because we are writing an equation, sine of X equals opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite is 5, hypotenuse is 12. That is our equation. Now, here's the good news, and people like these better for this reason. There's no solving, there's no getting a decimal, you don't have to put anything over 1 and cross multiply. Now, once you have your equation, you're actually going to go to Desmos and use what they call the inverse of sine. Okay, so remember, always check to see that your Desmos is in degrees. We do that by hitting the wrench up here in the right-hand corner. Okay, Oh, look, mine is still in degrees. Okay, sometimes, especially if you close the website or the app, it'll kick it back to radians. So always hit your wrench. Check, make sure degrees is highlighted. Now, there's no algebra here. You're going to hit the functions, okay, which is down here on the right-hand corner, down here at the bottom. Hit functions. Okay. And this time we want the inverse of sine. And the inverses of all the trig ratios are the second column that have the -1. Okay. We don't write it like that. You just have to remember, if I'm looking for the angle, if they have not given me the angle measure, if I'm looking for the angle, then I hit this middle column. So we're looking for the angle with sine, so we want to use the inverse sine. Okay, and it'll look like that. And then here you're just going to type in the fraction that you got. We said it was sine of x equals 5/12. Okay, and it's going to give you the answer. That's all you have to do. Now, I don't know if they said specifically what to round to, so let's go back. Nope, so let's round to the nearest tenth. They didn't ask us. Sometimes they'll ask you to round to the nearest whole number. It just depends. So we got 24.62. So that's going to stay 24.6. So my angle turns out to be 24.6, and it's degrees. It's degrees. And that's your answer. That's all that we're doing here. Most people like the angles better because they're less work. Okay, there's not any algebra once you write your equation. It is just a calculator problem, and you type it into Desmos. All right, let's try another one. Okay, step 1, mark your angle. Okay, here's my angle. I know it's the angle they want because they're calling it x. Step 2 is to mark the two sides that have information on them. I always check to see if the hypotenuse has information, because hypotenuse, most people are good at identifying. So I go opposite my right angle, yep. So I'm going to label that hypotenuse. Oops. Okay. And again, some of you may not need the arrow. That's fine. If you need it, draw it. Now I have to label this side right here, that is 10. So I have to decide, is it opposite my reference angle of x, or is it next to my reference angle? Okay, is it opposite or adjacent? It is next to, so that would make it adjacent. Again, if it's adjacent, it's also going to, this side is also going to touch the angle, if you want to look at it that way. So we have hypotenuse and adjacent. So next step, what trig function is that? Cosine. Good. So cosine of my angle, we don't know it, so we call it x, equals, because now we're on step 3, or step 4, let's write our equation. Cosine x equals adjacent a over hypotenuse, which is your h. So my equation is cosine x equals 10/15. I'm just going to go to Desmos. Okay, it should be in degrees. Okay, if you haven't checked, make sure you check. So we're going to hit functions again. Okay, again, we want the inverse cosine, so we have to pick the middle column where it has cosine to the -1. And fraction is 10/15. Okay, and you really don't even have to close your parentheses. It'll give you the answer. So 48.18 is going to round to 40. Did I say 1? 48.18. Yes, that was correct. So it's going to give us 48.2. And don't forget your degrees, because you did just find an angle measure. Let's try another one. Mark your reference angle. There we go. Let's label our two sides. 5.2 is my hypotenuse. 3.4, is it adjacent to my angle or opposite my angle? It is adjacent. Okay. Hopefully we recognize pretty quickly, well, this is cosine again, because we just did one. Cosine of my angle equals adjacent, 3.4, over hypotenuse, 5.2. Now it's just straight to Desmos. Hit the function button, We're doing inverse cosine because we're looking for the angle. So cosine to the -1. 3.4 over 5.2. And I always like to double check. 49.16. Round to the nearest tenth. Oh, 41 point. So what would that round to? Oh, not 41, 49. Let's fix that. 49.16, so that would round to 49.2. And so my angle is 49.2 degrees. Again, sometimes they'll ask just for the whole number. So if they wanted just the whole number, you would just write 49 degrees. Okay. If they wanted the whole number in number 1, or the first example, 24.6, that would round up to 25 degrees. You have to read the directions to know what they want you to round. All right, let's try one more, and then I'm going to let you try some by yourself. So, mark your angle. Label your sides. Okay, I notice there's nothing on this side, which would be my hypotenuse. I'm not going to label it because there's nothing there. So then I go, okay, this side is opposite. It is across from my angle. And 27.8 is next to, so that would be adjacent. So let's decide trig function. Which one has those two pieces in it? Opposite and adjacent. Tangent. So tangent of, what's my angle? X, because I don't know it, equals, don't forget your equals, because remember, we are writing equations. Opposite over adjacent. Now it's just a calculator problem. Come over here, hit functions. Okay, we want to use the inverse tangent, so tangent to the -1 technically. Type in your fraction, 18.6 over 27.8. And my angle turns out to be 33.78 degrees. Round to the nearest tenth. 0.78 would round up to 0.8. And that's my answer. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you 1 minute, and I just want you to set up the two equations for the next two. Okay, give you 1 minute. Just mark your angle, label your sides, figure out your trig function, write the equation. Don't try to solve anything, just in case your equation's off. Don't do the work. So you got a minute. See what you can do with these two down here at the bottom. We're just writing the equations. Again, you're just writing the equations. We're not going to Desmos yet. All right, so let's check what you got. Procedure never changes. It's the same whether you're looking for a side or an angle. Angles are easier because once you write your equation, it's just a calculator thing. There's no algebra. Not that sides are too much harder. Get your decimal, put it over 1, cross multiply. All right, so mark your angle. I do notice nothing on my hypotenuse. I'm not going to label it. Now I have to label the 34 and the 30, so it's either going to be adjacent or opposite. So, remember, opposite is across from, so that would make this opposite. Adjacent is next to. That side touches that angle. Again, you don't have to draw the arrow if you don't need it. It's just for my non-visual people. So what trig function has those two pieces in it? So, ka, or toa? That would be toa, right? Tangent of my angle, which is x, equals opposite over adjacent. 34 over 30. So, check what you wrote. Great job if that's what you got. No worries if that's not. If you made a little mistake, just make sure you correct it. You don't want notes that have incorrect information. All right, let's check the other. Well, no, let's go ahead and solve this one. Then we'll check the other one. So now you just got to head over to Desmos. Okay. Again, functions. It was tangent. We want inverse tangent, so tan -1. And it was 34 divided by 30. Okay. And again, I double check. Some of you have it split screen. It gets too small for me. So I get 48.57. Round to the nearest tenth. So my angle turns out to be 48.6. And don't forget your degrees. I know that sounds like a picky thing, but you are finding an angle, so make sure that you show that. Okay, just don't tell me 48.6. All right, let's see how you wrote the equation for this last one right here. Mark my angle. Label my 40 and 52. Okay, the 52 I notice is across from my right angle. That's my hypotenuse. And the 40 is across from my angle. So that would be opposite. Okay. Again, nothing on this last side. That would be my adjacent. I'm not going to label it. I don't need it. Okay, and it will confuse me if I have it written on there. All right, so which trig function has those two pieces out of so, ka, or toa? That would be your so. Okay, so sine of my angle, which is x, equals, and it's so it's opposite over hypotenuse. So again, check your work. Great job if you got it. No worries if you didn't. If you didn't get it right, just fix it so that you'll have the correct information. Now we got to head over to Desmos. And we like these because there's not too much involved. Hit functions. We're looking for the inverse sine, so sine to the -1. Type in your fraction, 40 over 52. So 40 divided by 52 is how we type it in on Desmos. The angle turns out to be 50.28. So x is equal to 50 that would round to a 3, and it's degrees. Okay, so that angle that we marked up here is 50.3 degrees. Last example. You know they're going to come with a real world example, so here it is. So, from the top of a building, a man sights a pedestrian. Okay, make sure you know what a pedestrian is. It's someone who's walking on the street. On the street below at a distance of 48 meters away. Okay, so here's your man. He's up here. Draw a little stick person. He sees another person. We'll make her walking along the street. Okay, and he's 48 meters away. The pedestrian is 34.5 meters away from the foot of the building. So I guess the building is right here. Okay, that's your building. That's how far the pedestrian is from the building, 34.5 meters. Find the angle of depression of the pedestrian from the man, correct to the nearest. Now this is important. They want the nearest degree, so they want us to round to the nearest whole number. You always want to read that. So yeah, again, can kind of make your head hurt, but they were kind enough to draw us a picture. The only thing you have to be aware of, the angle of depression, okay, would be right here. If they said angle of elevation, it would be the other angle down by my pedestrian. Okay, angle of depression would be up here. Angle of elevation would be down here on this part by the pedestrian. Okay. Again, they try to trick you with the way they word it. It's a right triangle. You're looking for an angle in a right triangle. That's trig. Okay. Mark your angle, label your sides, set up your equation, go to Desmos. So angle of depression would be up here, so I'm going to mark my angle. So we're looking for this angle right here. We label the two sides. We got 34.5 and 48. Okay. The 48 is my hypotenuse. It's across from my right angle. 34.5 is across from my angle. So remember, that's another word is opposite. We're not going to label this. They didn't say anything about how tall is the building or how high up the building is the guy. So we're not even going to mark that. There's no numbers on it. We don't need it. So what trig function has those two pieces? So, ka, or toa. It would be your so. There's your O, there's your H. Okay. Opposite hypotenuse. So that means it's going to be sine. So sine of my angle, I don't know it. That's what I'm trying to find out. So it's x equals, because we are writing an equation. Sine says opposite. So that's 34.5 over hypotenuse, 48. And now we just go straight to Desmos. They did say round to the nearest degree, so it's a whole number. So let's go see what our angle turns out to be. And I'm just going to close all these out so I'm not distracted. All right, so we're looking for the angle. Okay, we figured out the trig function is, or the trig ratio is sine, so we went inverse sine, so we used the middle column, sine to the -1. Now we're going to type in our fraction, 34.5 divided by 48. Okay, my angle comes out to be 45.95. And I'm actually going to write that, but that's not going to be my final answer. So 45.9 is what it comes out to be. Actually would, but they want the whole number, the nearest degree. So that's going to round up to 46 degrees. So that is going to be my final answer. So you just figured out that the angle of depression, which again is the angle up here at the top, is 46 degrees. You could also find this angle using trig, or you could use an old thing about the three angles of a triangle. Either way. Again, that down here, this angle where I put the question mark right here, that would be your angle of elevation if you ever see that. Angle of depression is this one up here. So, as usual, if they give you a really weird, complicated picture here, it wasn't super complicated. They didn't have weird drawings. But let's say they had a bunch of trees and buildings. You can always redraw it yourself without the stuff on it. Okay, don't be afraid to do that. It only takes about 2 seconds. So if the picture is distracting you, then redraw it as a boring right triangle. So again, you have to memorize your mnemonic, SOHCAHTOA. Okay, if you don't memorize this, you will struggle. So take the 10 minutes that it takes to memorize that. Okay. When you're looking for an angle, all you do is go to Desmos, use your inverse trig ratio. So you hit functions, you're in the middle column. Hit that, type in the fraction that you got when you set up your equation, and it will give you your angle measure. Much quicker, not by much though, than finding a side, because the calculator does all the work for you. Yesterday when we found the side, you did have to go in, find the decimal, and then do a little algebra with cross multiplying. So you guys are ready to go try the practice that goes with this. If you have any questions or need any help, send me a message and we will set something up. All right. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.